Ghostbusters being the thumbnail for today. You might be asking yourself, what in the hell is going on in the world of Ghostbusters? And that, well, essentially has everything to do with Dan Aykroyd, who has been igniting the talks or reigniting the talks for Ghostbusters 3. Now, you may think to yourself, but wait, don't we already have a Ghostbusters 3? Isn't Ghostbusters 3 the video game that came out in 2009? Well, I hate to break it to you. I really do. That was actually removed from being canon. That's no longer considered canon. They dropped it. I think because they dropped it due to the failure of Ghostbusters, the reboot. Right. Ivan Reitman at Comic-Con 2017 had admitted it on stage that it's no longer considered canon at a Ghostbusters IDW panel. I was there for that. I do have the footage of that somewhere. And yeah, it's a big deal that they dropped that as being canon, but it wasn't publicly known. It wasn't a big statement. He kind of said it offhand and nobody pushed back. Probably because they're thinking, hey, listen, we can wash the taste of 2016's Ghostbusters reboot completely out of our mouth by going back into the fray. But how would it work? Well, according to this article here, it says you're going way back. Dan Aykroyd's Ghost Corps, which is also co-run by Ivan Reitman, and those are the brainchild or the brain trust of Ghostbusters right now through Sony. They've wanted to develop a story here, which basically has Dana and Venkman's love child, Oscar, as a post-grad student who is forced to take over the business after Venkman dies in the first scene. Bill Murray's character was said to be a ghost in the third film, which allegedly had been greenlit up until Harold Ramis got sick and eventually passed away. Now that still, to this day, is just one of the most tragic things, that Harold Ramis is no longer with us to provide comedy and humor and everything else. And I would love to have seen this movie, even though I'm not a huge fan of the core idea with that little detail. I still would have watched it because it's Ghostbusters. And I mean, hell, I'm still a very ardent defender of Ghostbusters too. In fact, one of my favorite comments to make when in regards to Ghostbusters 2016 is that it by default made Ghostbusters 2 a better movie. And I think a lot of people finally realize that it's not as bad. But anyway, according to Ghostbusters News, who reports that Aykroyd was a special guest on an episode of The Big Interview with Dan Rather, revealed that they are in fact working on the screenplay for Ghostbusters 3 and allegedly could have the support of Bill Murray, saying here there is a possibility of a reunion with the 3 remaining Ghostbusters. It's being written right now. And he says, I think Billy will come. The story's so good, even if he plays a ghost. Now, Dan Aykroyd, when it comes to Ghostbusters, it's his baby, right? So he is going to be the consummate hype man. He's always going to hype it up. But it makes me really wonder where things are. Now, we know Sony's been working on a Ghostbusters animated film. We've known that since 2016. When I was at Comic-Con for the Ghostbusters panel in 2017, Reitman had talked about a live action movie. Now, one of the things at this panel that I found to be interesting, and this is where I do think things are going. So if you do hate Ghostbusters 2016, you're not going to like my theory on this one. But here's my theory. My theory simply is that what we're going to see is Ghostbusters 1984, that world, Ghostbusters 2016 crossing over. The Ghostbusters Answer the Call comic line, comic run through IDW has that exact storyline. And apparently it's been popular, at least through IDW. Now, those comics don't sell a great deal, but I do think that it was a way to test the waters to bridge the gap. Now, the idea would basically be that it's not all 2016 Ghostbusters, right? So there would be no Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig, or I think Leslie Jones in this one. Like what I heard was it mostly would be Kate McKinnon's Holtzman, or at least that's my speculation. What it would just be Holtzman and maybe Patty, right? The two underpaid, the two lower, lesser paid actresses in the movie coming off of SNL that would go through a portal that would take them into the alternate night, alternate New York, our New York, so to speak, for the original Ghostbusters. And they would team up with the 3. And they would learn the ropes of being actual Ghostbusters, and then the 2 would then cross over, and then that would kind of rebuild and reboot the franchise. And it could be possible that, you've got Oscars there and everything else. That's kind of what I'm thinking they're going to do, because it just seems to make the most sense, right? We're in an age now, we're crossing over into different properties kind of crossing over in very odd Portal-esque sort of ways. Think like Supergirl and the CW universe and whatnot. It's possible. It's a reality. And it's one that once they establish it, the audience will suspend enough disbelief in order to do it. And I think that's entirely fine. I think that's entirely okay. I think that would be a lot of fun. And, well, I don't know if I'd say it'd be a lot of fun. I don't want to say that. It all depends on the director. Paul Feig has said that he wants to come back to do Ghostbusters 2. Fans, I think, would absolutely revolt about that. They don't want him anywhere near it. I think Ivan Reitman is going to come back in to do one more. I think he wants to kind of correct the record, very similar to how we're hearing J.J. Abrams is going to course correct, Star Wars Episode 9. And I think that's kind of where we are in regards to these franchises and the changes that the studio heads want to make, right? These changes that fans don't like because they don't want their expectations subverted in jarring ways, right? They're okay with certain changes if they happen and they feel legit. In the case of Ghostbusters rebooting it, nobody wanted it. Nobody asked for it. The audience has clearly responded in a way that's like, no, we don't like your movie. And then here it is 2+ years later, and Melissa McCarthy still is accusing men of not leaving their mother's basements and hating women. And Paul Feig is still accusing men of all these problems. Never mind the fact that even women didn't like Ghostbusters. So there's that. It needs to have, if you want to make it work, you got to cross the streams. In this case, cross the universes. Even though I would much rather just have 2016 forgotten, I don't think we're ever fully going to get away from it. And that's just the unfortunate reality that we have to live in.